Hi, welcome to Money by Sunny. Today, we'll be talking about debt and loans, which is something that almost all of us have to some extent. We often use debt to help finance large purchases, ranging from household appliances to cars to houses or properties. Although debt can be complicated, the two key characteristics that we usually pay attention to are the interest rate and the tenure. The interest rate is normally quoted as a per annum or PA figure, which refers to how much interest you pay on your principal on an annual basis. This can range from 0% or an interest-free loan, which is extremely rare, to as high as hundreds of percent for some payday loans. Interest rates are definitely something that you would want to minimize as a borrower, as it represents money being paid to the lender and not to pay off your loan principal. The other key component of debt is the tenure, or how long you have to repay the loan. This can range from a couple of days, again using the example of payday loans, or up to a few decades, which is the common tenure for mortgages or housing loans. Tenures are not so simple though, as there are pros and cons to short and long repayment periods. For the same amount of principal, you'll pay a higher monthly installment but less interest overall for shorter tenures, and a lower monthly repayment but higher interest overall for longer tenures. Basically, if the installment is affordable, most people try to shorten the tenure so as to save on interest. When it comes to debt, we're also usually taught to clear or pay off debt as quickly as possible, which is certainly a good piece of advice. But not all debt is created equal. There's good debt and bad debt, and other debt that may not be so easy to classify. Let's go through some examples of each to get a better idea of the different types of debt and their potential impact. Bad debt. What is bad debt? Some people view all debt as bad, but this may be an overly conservative view, as some types of debt may be unavoidable. We'll go over a few of these in the good debt category, but as for bad debt, this generally refers to borrowings that are used to finance items that are either not strictly necessary or are of diminishing value. Let's have a look at two of the most common candidates. Number 1. Debt for consumption. This refers to debt to finance nice-to-have, consumable items, which tend to be charged to a credit card. Consumables here can refer to purchases such as fashion or clothes, electronics, and even holidays. While these items are certainly nice and good from a quality of life perspective, it's much better that they are paid for through savings rather than debt, since they are not items that will improve in value over time. Instant gratification is one of the causes for this type of debt to grow, since it's so easy to pay for things by swiping a card. Credit cards in themselves are not bad if used properly. That is, paid off in full at the end of every billing cycle, with no balance carried forward. The issue is that credit cards tend to have pretty high interest rates, which tend to range from 10 to 20% per annum. This is compared to 2 to 4% for a mortgage, which is why credit cards can be dangerous if you allow a balance to be built up. Number 2. Debt to purchase a car. This is normally considered as bad debt, since you're taking out an auto loan which is to pay for a depreciating asset. It's an often quoted truism that your new car loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. The general rule of thumb is that cars lose about 10 to 20% of their value each year, though the exact figure will depend on the make and model. For example, cars such as Toyotas that have a good reputation for reliability and durability tend to keep their values better. Whichever the model of car though, instead of building equity in your asset, you're basically hoping that you can pay off your loan faster than your car loses value, so that you're at least left with some resale value. Having said this, we all know that a means to get around is a basic requirement in our lives. Also, there are times when public transport is either not feasible or just flat out unavailable. In these situations, a car is a necessity. However, consider buying either a second-hand car, which will reduce the size of your loan, or better yet, saving up enough to buy the car outright without needing a loan. Good debt. You may be wondering how any debt that incurs interest can be considered as good. Let's go back to the basics of what debt is, which essentially is to allow you to purchase an item or service now, rather than waiting until some time in the future, when you've managed to save up enough. How can we identify if debt is good then? There are two tests that you can apply to any item that you're considering going into debt for, to see if it qualifies as good debt. Number 1. Is it something that fulfills a basic human need, meaning a must-have rather than a nice-to-have? And number 2. Is it something that is going to generate income over and above how much the debt itself costs? If the item ticks at least one of these boxes, then it is probably something worth considering. Again, let's look at two examples. Number 1. Debt to buy your home. A place to live in and a roof over your head is a must for anyone, and because of this, taking out a loan to buy the home that you plan to live in is usually a good idea. The alternative is renting, and while there are some advantages to that, mobility, for example, if your profession requires relocation. In most circumstances, it may be better to pay a monthly repayment to a bank rather than pay rent to a landlord, so that you can build equity in your home. As with any loans, it pays to shop around with multiple lenders to make sure that you get the best deal in terms of interest rate, loan tenure, and other loan features such as lump sum principal repayments, offset payments, etc. Number 2. Debt to improve your skills. Education is one of the other categories that can be thought of as good debt, the most common being study loans for college or university. A good undergraduate or postgraduate degree can be a springboard to a secure and well-paying career that could be the foundation for your future success. The caveat here is that this education or newly acquired skills must have some clear, defined economic benefit to you. This means that it should be able to land you a better, more high-paying job than what you currently have, or to generally allow you to charge customers more for your services. While it's always nice to enhance your skill set, remember what we talked about earlier in deciding if debt is good or not. It has to be able to translate to more money in your pocket, after subtracting the cost of the debt itself. What about gray area debt? Sometimes it's not so easy to neatly categorize types of debt into good and bad. The individual situation can certainly play a part, and even some types of bad debt might be worthwhile in some circumstances. Let's go through a couple of possible gray area debt types. Number 1. Debt to invest in property. Investing in property used to be regarded as textbook good debt, since it was assumed that property values would only go up, and you could rely on rental income to partially or completely fund your loan repayments. However, as we learned from the global financial or subprime crisis more than a decade ago, this is by no means a certainty, and property prices are definitely capable of declining. Moreover, it's not always a simple task earning that rental income. You need to find good tenants who hopefully pay their rent on time and take good care of your property. Otherwise, it may be a headache dealing with difficult tenants or having to pony up repair or maintenance money every now and again, which will eat into your income. Number 2. Debt consolidation via credit card. We saw earlier that credit card debt is generally classified as bad debt, and for good reason. However, in certain situations, credit card debt can work to your advantage. Banks occasionally come up with 0% APR credit card balance transfer offers, which can be a great way to consolidate your credit card or personal loan debt into a single place and save on interest. The 0% promotional rate won't go on forever, but they tend to last for around 6 months at least, during which time you could be garnering significant interest savings. You just need to be aware of what the regular non-promotional rate is and be sure that this is still below, or at least on par with the interest on the other debts that you are consolidating onto this credit card. This is so that you don't lose out once the promotional period ends. Some level of debt is probably unavoidable for most of us, especially when starting out in our careers. But not all debt is created equal. By understanding the different types and reasons for debt, we're better able to control and use it in a way that improves our financial well-being, by minimizing the bad debt and trying to ensure that we only hold good debt. If you like this video, please do subscribe and leave us a like or a comment. See you next time on Money by Sunny.